So this is another one of the Chapter 2 webinars. The aim of these webinars, as always, is to bring on to the panel talent and HR experts who can share their wealth of knowledge and experiences and tell some stories about some of the challenges that they have encountered during their time, some of the challenges that they can foresee for the industry, and for me to be able to ask some questions on how they would address certain challenges or how they have addressed certain challenges to share in the knowledge to everybody else who's listening to help them in their businesses, respectively. So a couple of introductions. Firstly, I've got Lucy Hegarty with us on the panel from GSK. Lucy, do you want to give a very quick introduction to yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So I'm the Head of Early Talent Recruitment at GSK. I've been working there about 2 years. I also hold the role of Global Recruitment Account Manager for our global support functions, which just keeps me in touch a little bit with more of the experience and executive hire as well going on. So yeah, great to be here.
Thank you very much. And I've also got Dani Saadu here with us from Collinson. Dani, just a quick intro from yourself would be great.
Hello, hi. So I'm Global Director of Talent. I look after talent development, talent management, and talent attraction within the business. And I feel extremely privileged to be on this webinar. Sorry for being late. It is the way of the world we are in, but I'm looking forward to this discussion.
Mate, I know how busy you are, so I really appreciate you giving the time. And Sophie.
Yeah, so I'm Sophie. I look after solution design for Chapter 2 and regularly attend the Chapter 2 webinars and podcasts. Absolutely love speaking to industry leaders from a range of different industries and hearing kind of their opinions and expertise on what we're currently facing and what they think about the future.
Cool, thank you very much. So I'm going to kick off this with my own question. And I'm going to start with Lucy, but then I'll be the same question over to Dani. Obviously, the last year has been a bit crazy, to say the least. And we've seen the demand for talent change dramatically, no matter where you're looking for it and what type of talent you're looking for. What have been, Lucy, your biggest challenges of 2021? Take us through what 2021 looked like for you in your role, and talk us through some of the challenges and how you overcame them.
Sure. So it's almost hard to remember the start of the year reflecting back, and it was such a different world then. We were coming out of, certainly from an early talent perspective, we were coming through a season where we had just had record volumes of applications. There was great uncertainty about the economy, and therefore people were nervous about what jobs would be available. So people were firing off tons of applications. I think it's always a unique situation for our school leavers, for our graduates, because of course they have no job at the moment. They can't just stay where they are. They have to go out there and search. So we saw massive spikes in the numbers there. And that was certainly a challenge to manage, because of course then we always say all but one candidate for a role is a candidate you have to decline, and managing that candidate experience most of the time you're trying to manage the experience of rejection. And I think, you know, that's never really a great thing for us when we see those huge volumes come in. So that's kind of where we started the year. And as the year has progressed and we've seen economic recovery, and perhaps some of the economic damage wasn't as bad as people feared, we suddenly realized a lot of the candidates we'd offered to had a few offers come through, and they had a choice on their hands, and suddenly we're competing for them. And that extremes, you know, of the shift from being in this really kind of employer-centered market to a very candidate-centered market has been a real pivot. And I think, you know, you always like to think you're giving candidates the best experience you can. But of course, it was more challenging to have put our best foot forward when we were managing the volumes we were. So yeah, I think really it has been the volatility that has been most challenging. When I think about the wider recruitment scene outside of just early talent, again, that shift existed. We suddenly started to see this great resignation emerge, and we certainly did see some attrition. We saw that when we were recruiting, there was a huge increase in counter offering. So I think that just competitiveness of the market and how rapidly it evolved has meant that, you know, we like to pride ourselves in being a strategic and proactive part of the organization, but it has forced us to be incredibly responsive and to really change our approach as we went. And, you know, we were asking questions of the business that they were really struggling to answer. How many people are you going to hire in the next 3 months? Yeah. It was be hard for them to know. So I think all that uncertainty and volatility has been the biggest challenge we've had.
Thank you. Yeah, volatility is definitely that one. So I want to go into a couple of things you said, because one of them, well, they both really resonate, but one of them came up on a previous webinar actually as well with, it was one we did last year with Tom Portingale from, he was back then, he was at Nationwide. And I don't think a lot of people outside of our world really see this, but when you hire people and you go through the talent acquisition process, you have to say no to a lot of people. And it's how you say no is such an important thing. From a sort of early careers point of view, confidence is a massively important thing, you know, and when these guys are coming out into work. Can you talk to me a little bit how your process worked when you do say no to people? How did you deliver the message? You know, how is it received? How do you manage that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's very challenging. And I think if you think it's a negative experience for people to be rejected from a job application, it is a very negative experience for your child to be rejected. So we are always aware the impact and the ripples of the experience you give people's kids is huge, you know, and they feel much more emotionally about that even than their own experience. So from our side, I think the challenge we have is it is volume recruitment. You're not talking about 20 candidates, one role. You're talking about maybe 3,000 candidates, one role. And I think there's still, among many students, kind of a frustration that it feels very inhuman. They feel like a number. They submit an online application, they do a couple of online tests, and then they get a template email telling them they were rejected. We do our best wherever possible. We have a lot of automated feedback that will give them indication where in the scoring, you know, maybe they didn't kind of meet the benchmark. And I think hopefully that is something they can then take forward to future applications, and it gives them something to build on. We always, you know, review our comms to try and make sure that the language feels very human, that it doesn't feel too kind of impersonal and technical. But the reality is we are sending a lot of automated emails to reject people, and that never feels nice. We're actually in the process now of developing a kind of candidate coaching portal, which candidates can apply to. They can do little online learnings. They have a buddy area where they can ask questions of people that may be on the program now. And the idea of that is to support people as they're going through the process. And I think there's a piece we're looking at putting in there around what happens if I'm not successful, like when can I apply again if I want to, what other options are there? You know, you might have applied for one particular program that wasn't the right fit. What about something else? So I think to try and help people, not just looking at GSK, but potentially other employers, is the best we can do. But honestly, yeah, I don't think we have got it perfectly right. I think there will be people that come out of the process disappointed and not feeling like they've really had a chance to prove themselves. And it's definitely a challenge we face. I don't have a great answer to that one, unfortunately.
No, you do really, but it's, you know, it's your care and diligence across the process. You recognise that you can't write you know, to be flippant, a letter in person with quill to everybody that hasn't made it. It's a volume game. You have to send a message is better than no message, right? And it's how the message is composed and written, and make sure it's relevant, and also make sure that they don't feel they can't apply again. But you've gone from this like world whereby, you know, 90% of these people have said no to, and you've got all this rich talent coming through, to, as you say, a barren land of like limited applications because competition has just gone so vast. The second point to my question, before I jump on the same question for Dani, would be, how did you, as GSK being so massive, become immediately competitive and stay nimble when it came to candidate attraction? Because all of a sudden, you're this massive company, right? So I'm assuming you can't just start throwing money at people and all this sort of stuff. You have processes and procedures to follow. How did you start to become immediately competitive, to start to get these talent in when you start to realize, oh my God, we're losing talent to these people. We need to get them in. So I'm going to try and switch my WhatsApp off because it keeps going off. Apologies, I thought I'd just switch it off.
Yeah, it's been very interesting from a brand perspective. Obviously, the middle of a pandemic is a very interesting time to be in pharma. And the reality is, for a lot of people, you've got companies like AstraZeneca and Pfizer that have had a huge amount of publicity, and the benefit that their vaccines have brought has been very notable. And, you know, GSK being one of the largest distributors of vaccines in the world did not have a contender. So that was definitely a big challenge for us, particularly recruiting that scientific talent, thinking, you know, they want to be at the cutting edge. So we had to work very hard, I think, on some of the messaging around our drugs pipelines, our vaccines pipelines, and the exciting things that are there. And certainly within industry, that was a key focus, making sure that our leaders were out there talking about what we're doing, what lessons we learned throughout the pandemic. I think in the more kind of business oriented roles where people say, okay, it's pharma, but ultimately it's a big company with certain prospects, that was a big focus for us, was around I&D this year. And it was about really showcasing, you know, GSK does have a great working culture, and that's something we lean very heavily on in our attraction. It's something that tends to serve us well. That's the reputation that many candidates have of GSK. So it was really about kind of using our employees' voice more than the corporate voice when we're talking about opportunities available, and really encouraging our managers to be much more front and center with the attraction activity to give that kind of authenticity throughout all the noise. So yeah, I mean, I would acknowledge we have a massive advantage versus, you know, you have so many of these incredibly also large companies that are not household names. You know, the biggest company you've never heard of. I've heard that for a number of companies in that situation, and that must be much more challenging.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. And I think to again, just final note on that, I think bringing management in, or at least the hiring management in to the process as early as possible, because, you know, in my view, they're the salesperson. You know, that, you know, I think, you know, recruitment is a sales and marketing game, and if you bring the talent acquisition person is a salesperson, but also the hiring manager is the additional salesperson to help, you know, convince the candidate. And really, the candidate is buying into the talent acquisition person, but they're relaying the message. They're really going to buy into the hiring manager because they're the one they're going to work with, right? So
yeah.
bring the hiring manager into the process as soon as possible so they can meet the potential candidates that we got to sell to bring them in, actually gets that little bit more commitment emotionally and connects you to the candidate. So it means that if they do get a counter offer somewhere, the competition will be less because they would have built that direct relationship. So to nail that piece of advice, I think that's really good. Bringing the hiring managers in much earlier so they can start to cement and build a relationship with the favorite candidates will create more of a connection. So if a counter offer does come in or something does happen, they don't just, you know, have an emotionless relationship with you guys. They go, oh, I've got to let that guy down. I really liked him or her, or you know what I'm saying? So,
yeah, absolutely. I think in the counter offer culture, that sense of there being a person you let down rather than an anonymous organization. Yeah.
Smart, that's smart. Thank you. Dani, so you guys have had an interesting journey, because obviously Collinson is largely in the loyalty and travel space, massive software and product technology offering. Tell me about your year.
Yeah, obviously we work very closely with you guys at Chapter 2, so you're very aware of what our year's been like. So we make 70 to 80% of our revenue comes from travel. Our sweet spot is providing access to frequent business travelers' airport lounges when they travel. So before the pandemic, we were doing 150,000 lounge visits per day in terms of our members. That went down to 250 in the first lockdown. So we were massively impacted by revenue. We had the largest round of redundancies we've ever had in our history, and also had a lot of people on furlough. So if we go back to the beginning of the year, we had a kind of like recruitment freeze, unless there were really, really critical roles that kept the lights on. So we went from a place where we weren't recruiting. People were working exceptionally hard in their jobs, remote working. They probably needed more resource. Their teams were probably more streamlined than they've ever been. We weren't able to bring people in to support them and to add to their resource. So they are working harder than they've ever worked. They're really, bleeding for the organization. And then we come to a point where the world starts to open up, the economy starts to open up. We get some investment into us as a business. Travel starts to pick up, and we then start to recruit again. And the market is just absolutely insane. So we're kind of like, we've got this balance between people who have been working for us for a really long time, stayed with us because there wasn't really much out there because of the current climate. They absolutely working their asses off to a point now where we are now able to recruit and bring people in, but because there's such a competition now for talent and organizations are offering what they're offering, we are having people going, you know something, I worked really hard. I would like the reward and recognition for working as hard as I did back at the earlier part of the year. You weren't able to kind of support me and give me the resource. What am I now going to get? And where we have not been able to deliver on that, we've lost really good people. And we've also had to replace them. And also we've had to grow back to, we're now in the process of growing back to where we were pre-pandemic. So we're in this kind of balance of trying to retain talent and keep them and show them that actually we really appreciate what you've done in the times when we were really kind of firefighting, and also trying to bring in new talent and grow back the people that we lost through redundancy. And that is providing really hard. So we've got this balance between the kind of this great resignation of people and this great attraction that we're finding really tough. And what it's also done is put a microscope on our internal kind of benefits and wage structure and remuneration. And probably we should have looked at it probably sooner than we are, sooner than we have. And I think the market is forcing us to look at what we offer our people and to actually maybe we need to change it. We need to offer more. We need to give them more if we want to keep them. So that's kind of like where we are at.
Yeah, and obviously we've one of the things that I got the privilege and the benefit of is obviously understanding your business more intimately than an outsider. And one of the things that I'd say in feedback is that you are, as an individual, but also as Collinson business, are very open to listening to strategy and insights, what's going on in the industry. So, we've, as you know, put quite a bit of work into, what is the new market rate for different jobs? What do people want today that they what sort of benefits are people looking for? What locations are they working? What companies are poaching them? Because again, when you talk about the demand for talent, the competition for talent, your competition probably isn't the competition you see at a consumer level. Your competition is hiring for that talent, and you might not even know who they are or not much about them. So one of the things I've really admired about the Collinson business is the openness to bring talent strategy to the top table with data and insight to help your sort of chief people strategy to determine what the future salaries and benefits should look like, and how you can start to move into that direction. Because what you've just articulated is not an overnight fix. You can't just suddenly more. Do you know what I mean? So it's a sort of it's a move in direction that you've got to take. And one of the things that you guys do very well is you listen to the insights and what the markets are telling you.
We move quickly. So we're an entrepreneurial business. We're family owned, independently run, and we were 2,200 people pre-pandemic. We went down to 1,800 because of the impact to our revenue and what happened to us in the pandemic. But as we've kind of like been coming out of the pandemic and realized that we need to grow back to where we were and we need to retain our talent and also attract new talent, we decided that we would listen to external forces, for example, working with you guys as Chapter 2, but also to insight we're getting from other areas as well. And we've pivoted to kind of create a joined up talent approach. So one of the things we did was that we talent attraction used to be standalone within Collinson. It used to be standalone on its own, but we actually have merged it together to create a talent function, which I now head up. So I used to be responsible for just talent development and people development, L&D, but actually we've decided that there should be an integrated approach, and we need to provide a better talent experience across from end-to-end journey, from the moment you attract to the moment you join, you're in, and to keep you long-term, that should all be one. So we now have kind of talent attraction and talent development integrated, which is meaning that we can do more and pivot more and actually have better ideas, and also ensure that we can look at not just kind of solving the problem and solving the problem from a talent attraction piece, but actually looking more at our internal problems to ensure that we can, once they're in, we can keep them longer term and also attract them as well.
And do you have like a genuine question? Do you have a target as to, I know the ideal scenario is forever, but how in your business, so they're coming on day one. Do you have like an aim to, okay, we need, the average tenure of an employee at X level needs to be Y? Is that how you measure these things? How do you measure that?
I think that's a good question. I think for us in Collinson, the way we measure that is by what we call a good leaver.
Right.
Yeah. And for us, a good leaver is somebody who has reached the pinnacle of their talent journey within Collinson, and we can't really give them more to keep them. And actually, they've gone on to something bigger and better as the result of the journey they've been on with us. And that for us is a good leaver. So we kind of measure that in our exit interview. Are you a good or a bad leaver? Yeah. A bad leaver to us is somebody that has left. We could have actually done more for them. We could have given them more development. We could have given them more investment and provided them with a better experience than they're getting elsewhere. Right. If we get to a point where actually we can't give that to them, and they're getting something bigger and better because we've helped them get to that stage, that's a good lever for us. And I think, and we've been able to have that approach because we've moved to having this more joined up talent approach within our business.
I can clearly see that's a really good strategy. Connecting. When the people come in, they're also got oversight by the people that are going to keep them in.
Yeah.
Lucy, from an early careers point of view, similar sort of question, I guess. When a young individual, early careers individual, comes into GSK, into any different role, how do you keep tabs on these guys as in progressing their career? Because obviously, I can imagine you don't just go, there you go, you're in, see you later. You kind of like want them to flourish and they're like a seed, right? And then you want them to blossom into your business.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, talent comes to us in different forms. We have people that join us on defined programs where they get set development and there are clear expectations around where they land, and that's tracked in the organization. And there are a lot of people that join us as employees into direct entry roles. And there is definitely less observation of those, that's less trackable to us. But I think the key thing we have tried to focus on in recent years actually is to maybe break the mindset that there is historically a little bit of a more is always better with retention. The longer you keep people, the better. And I think we've had to ask some challenging questions of ourselves more recently following some transformation that happened internally. So in our larger markets for early talent like the UK and the US, we've outsourced a certain number of roles to regional hubs where rather than every market having their own certain teams, they're joined together. And what that has tended to do is reduce the number of entry-level roles in some of these markets. And certainly some of the kind of first line leader roles have gone out. And I think what that's, we've now got quite a steep kind of curve in that it's quite a big jump from one level to your manager's level. It requires quite a bit more experience. And it is harder for us to define those career paths for people. And I think historically GSK has been a company that leaned very, very heavily on internal pipelines for recruitment. And we're having to think about actually what is a good lever. As Dani said, I think you have to think about actually it's not necessarily a problem. If someone has had a good experience with your company, been able to offer them good development, for a company the size of GSK, there's every chance they may come back in some form in the future. There are many roles they may come back to. And I think we are thinking more about, what does that boomerang journey look like? What is it about, alumni pools that we can do to try and keep track of people who are great employees that we hope will come back to us one day? And I think with early talent in particular, that's a good thing. That's someone who isn't just siloed into one company mindset. They've gone out there and got some breadth, maybe a different industry or at least a different company with different values and approach that sees them looking at things a bit differently, and they come back with that richer experience. So historically, what we've typically done is kind of benchmarked ourselves against some industry figures. Early talent has some quite good kind of data points around about 50% of your early talent cohort should be with you after about 5 years. And that's where we do a litmus test to say, are we above that? Are we below that? Are we happy with where that is? And exactly as Dani said, what's the nature of those people that have left? Were they people that maybe in the end it wasn't the right fit for them, or were they people who, will come back at some point? And it is kind of the quality of that leaver experience that really matters.
That's interesting. There are quite a few different little KPIs that measure talent acquisition, right? You got the obvious ones that are like time to hire, cost to hire, but actually longevity of the individual who you hire and how long they stay for, and also the performance of that individual are two key areas we're starting to look at now. So you just talked about longevity of the employee and how long they stay. I think that's a really good KPI as to how well the talent person has done in getting that candidate into your business, because that's, you know, the secret isn't filling a seat. The secret is delivering a person that can, you know, add value to that company, and really build a team out. And the quality of that individual does that. We are implementing some measurement metrics that start to treat. We're creating a chapter, creating our own CRM basically that tags anyone that chapter 2 put in, and then we ask our clients for their performance review results on how well that person is performing. And if we can present that actually 90% of the candidates that we put into our clients perform above average standard scored by our clients, that's a really good metric that we're good at finding quality people into our business.
This is really close to my heart what you guys are talking about. So apologies for me just jumping in here. Obviously, you know, we work very closely with Chapter 2. They're our talent partner. One of the things we are looking at, and you know, in collaboration with Chapter 2, and they're supporting us with this, is what is the talent attraction or talent acquisition experience. Yeah, so we're measuring that also as a KPI. So from the moment you are interacted from somebody from, you know, Collinson or Chapter 2 to be involved in the hiring process and to bring you on, we measure what was your experience like. Did you enjoy it? Was it personal? Did we treat you well? Did you feel like an individual? Because that for us is basically an advert for us to say, this is what our culture is about. This is the kind of people, this is the kind of organization you'll be joining. We like to make things personal. We like to make sure that you have a really good experience. And that then links into people coming in a really motivated and engaged way. And hopefully we try and continue that experience from the moment they join, and that kind of end-to-end, I suppose, end-to-end talent kind of journey. One of the things I'll share on here that I haven't necessarily, I've started to speak to my boss about, is around what does kind of my area look like long term. And I'm hoping long term, actually, what I'm hoping I will be responsible for is what we call talent experience, not just talent.
Yeah.
So from the moment somebody is interacted with from day one, all the way through to them joining, all the way through to them leaving like a good leaver, that is all talent experience for us. And all of that needs to be joined up. And I think you getting that right means you then end up keeping people for a longer period and also attracting really good people.
I think you're right. I think, you know, one of the things, as you know, I'm from the marketing background, marketing industry. And one of the things that brands spend an awful lot of money on is consumer experience, customer experience, user experience of the products. This is no different, right? The consumer is the candidate, right? And if they have poor touch points, aren't communicated with, you're going to get a poor NPS score at the end of the day. You're then not going to promote your business. However, just like, you know, where good candidates can come and boomerang back around, these guys, back to our point earlier, Lucy, you know, you could say no to them, but like, okay, no worries, but feel really good about the company still, want to apply for the next job. That's a real key metric. So I think more investment in the user experience, and both, I think there are two areas to really focus on, Dani. I know we've spoken about this, but there is absolutely the candidate experience. I think applicant tracking systems are going to need to evolve a lot more over the next coming, you know, decade, because at the moment I'm seeing a huge amount. When I entered into the recruitment space, one thing, I went to all of the conferences, went to all the road shows and all that sort of stuff. Every stand was almost technology, and there's loads of it out there. But actually, I'm yet to see, and please tell me if there is one out there on the audience or here, that, you know, the one that is as tailored as possibly a sales tailoring can get. You know, when you talk about, you know, sales and marketing tailoring, I feel that when I'm being sold something by someone because they know, you know, what Facebook profiles I've gone into or what I've been Googling for, these guys know my shoe measurement, right? And they know like more about me than my, you know, wife does, type thing, right? But actually, when it comes to, and I know I'm sort of getting to utopia here, but when it comes to like the candidate experience. How much further do ATSs need to get to actually not just say, thank you very much for applying for the job. We really appreciated your considered application. Unfortunately, on this occasion, how much further can that go to actually remaining in contact with that customer, continually sending them nurture emails and communication, and trying to get them automated and bring them back in the bite without a talent person having to do it? I challenge an ATS to show me that journey.
I don't know if you're aware, so I found this out from a stats point of view. 45% of people under the age of 35 in the UK apply at least once for a role using a mobile device. Yeah. So if the user experience isn't great, you get a high drop-off rate. Massively. Yeah. So you want to have a user experience regardless of where you are, placing your hiring or applying, should be seamless, should be really cool, really funky, really nice, and therefore adds to the experience we were talking about.
Yeah, and it is sales and marketing approach. So as an example, going back to the marketing example, right? So the marketing example is this, right? I had a Fitbit, right? I was quite happy with my Fitbit. Told me how many steps I did, told me how many calories I burnt, all that sort of good stuff. And I wasn't looking for any other type of fitness garment watch. But then again, I started looking around at some stuff. I clicked on a link. I looked at an Instagram post, and all of a sudden I start getting served up content about a new product, a Whoop, I think it was. Yeah, it's Whoop band. I wasn't looking, but Whoop started sending me stuff. Got quite interested. Before I know it, I'm on the Whoop website and I'm looking at different colors. I'm picking my band, and I've bought a Whoop band. I've ditched my Fitbit and I'm on a Whoop now, right? This is marketing for products. There's no different to candidates, right? So if on the other end of the scale, if we are serving out content about this amazing business, it doesn't need to be about a specific role, a specific hire, but actually, if people are always on these things all of the time, right? It's the last thing if you're sad like me, it's the last thing you look at when you go to bed, and it's the first thing you look at when you wake up. Basically, if businesses are putting out how amazing their places to work, people are going to be unconsciously browsing. And if they see some stuff that they think is really quite inspiring, that other people are liking and sharing, they're going to show interest. They might not even be aware that they're looking for a job, but they're going to show interest in that post, go in, they're going to see some really interesting film, they're going to see, read and listen to some really interesting stories about that business. And they're going to possibly be converted into purchasing, or come into the sort of circle that we might start to then engage with them as a potential candidate. My point here is that if you're not, this is the window basically into our brands, our clients' worlds. If you're not putting stuff up on this window for them to look into, but to see you as a business, you're not even in the race. And that's fundamentally part of what our model is. Lucy, did you want to say something on that?
Well, I was just going to jump in and say, I think that's definitely something we've come up against, but we've had some really interesting feedback around two things. One, there is some feedback that for people from a mental health perspective, they don't necessarily want to see employers on their personal channels. They want a little bit of, they want to be able to shut off and open Facebook or Instagram or what have you without kind of something that feels like maybe a bombardment of work into that space. And the second thing is, I think it gets into a really interesting space around data and trust and your employer, and whether people feel comfortable with the idea that employers are going to know so much about them, and do we want them, with every kind of tracking cookie all over our computers. I mean, programmatic advertising is something we've kind of looked at in the past, and interestingly, GSK is very risk averse when it comes to data. So we can't even tell, what website people have come from to get onto our careers website. The tracking is very, very limited. They don't like any of that kind of cookie stuff. And it's an interesting, dilemma, because we would love to know more. We would love to understand that journey and where people heard about us and what led them to click through and which posts have been successful. But the company are kind of reluctant for us to be collecting that. And I do think that's an interesting dichotomy. And I think moving forwards, we might see a lot more, in the advent of Meta and all the kind of stuff around trying to manage that data a little bit more and what we do with that analytics and things. I do wonder if there'll be more pushback on that, as much as it'd be incredibly helpful from a marketing perspective.
Yeah. Well, so we're moving into a conversation now around employer brand content, all that sort of stuff, right? And Lucy, from an early careers perspective, I'm really curious to understand what is your chosen channel of employer brand communication, if you have one. You've obviously got your career site. My questions are thus: do you create microsites for your early careers? Does it come as part of your central website? And if you do, what are your channels to get these people into your business?
So for us, we have a central GSK careers website that Early Talent has sat within for most of the time. The tool I mentioned earlier around that kind of candidate coaching, this is something that we're almost creating to be able to have a bit of a microsite. I think with general recruitment, there is advice that you don't want to put too much information out there. You want to keep your job descriptions fairly pithy, try and make it easily digestible. And while that is true for early talent audiences in terms of attention span and things, there is also a reality that their baseline knowledge is much lower, and you need to give them the option to find out as much as possible. So I think that idea of a microsite for early talent is something we wanted to somehow kind of create so that people that wanted to know more could. In terms of the channels that direct people there, we do find for graduate audiences, there are a lot of very popular graduate specific kind of channels that students know to use. There is a very strong kind of milk round that goes around graduates, and sites like Target Jobs, for example, are great at delivering volume. We've got sites like Grad Cracker that specialize more in like technical engineering type roles. So we do leverage those. LinkedIn is definitely growing over the last few years. I would say 5 years ago, very, very few students were really using it. And now it has become a place not only that we can advertise on, but also actively source at that student level. And I think when it comes then down to school leavers, it's the broader channels like Indeed is generally our biggest source of candidates for those. And there hasn't been the kind of market penetration around early talent third parties that you can partner with. It's a much more complex kind of model with just the volume of schools and colleges that you'd have to interact with. So there's a lot in that space, I think, around when you hit are you dealing with under 18s as well, that makes things complicated. But for us, predominantly, it's kind of jobs boards and LinkedIn that deliver the bulk of our attraction activity.
That's an interesting question, actually. So it used to be, or is it still the case that from an early careers perspective, you have to really be tapped into the universities, and you have to be tapped into the different educational areas, faculty syndicates, to be promoted, presented, and to have a stand at their open day or whatever it be. Is that still the case, or is it now more of a digital play?
I think it's a balance. It depends what you're trying to achieve. I think if what you're looking for is volume, actually you'll have much more success going out to some of these jobs boards. They will have penetration across all universities, and you will reach that wider audience much more cheaply and less resource intensively. I think when it comes down to being more targeted, trying to look for specific profiles, and particularly if you are trying to address representation issues in your pipelines, that's where working with the universities is really beneficial. Those career services, they know their student base, they know the channels that their students are using. We do see there is kind of a predominance of certain demographics of candidates that are more likely to use certain channels than others. And across the board, even career services are shown to be used less by underrepresented students in a lot of cases. So I think it depends what you're trying to do, whether the best route is to go through these jobs boards, to build those relationships with career services at target universities, or even to bypass the lot and start speaking to students through brand ambassadors or through society websites. It certainly doesn't generate the volume, but if you are looking for really specific audiences, that's a better way to reach them.
Awesome, thank you. That's really good to know.
I'm going to jump in with a quick question, because I think there's a few people who are keen to ask, and obviously going back to Dani's point as well about how Dani and Collinson are taking a bit of a closer look at values and that sort of thing. So Lewis has asked, there is a push towards benefits and additional perks. Do these really make a difference, or is it mostly salary and working environments? Dani, over to you, and then Lucy, I know we touched on this the other day as well, so it'd be good to get your thoughts.
I absolutely salary is important. You can't get away from that. It is key when it comes obviously to attracting and bringing in talent. I think the other thing that's really important is flexible working. Flexible working has become absolutely really key and high on the agenda. For the last nearly 2 years, we've been working remotely. In a lot of industries and organizations, working from home was quite taboo. We were forced to work from home, and we've shown that actually the world didn't end, and we were very efficient and productive. I was very productive working from home and remote working. And a lot of organizations now are offering something called remote first, basically meaning, and that's the actual word now, they've coined it as remote first. So meaning you can work from wherever you want to remotely, and you decide when you come in, and organizations create events and forums to bring people into the office to collaborate and to work together and to celebrate things. But actually, predominantly you work from home or you work remotely, and that's what's called remote first. And that's something that's been very big for us, because we've got a massive tech area, and our chapter 2 supports with recruitment in that area. We've got a massive tech area that is very critical to our business, and tech is probably one of the hardest arenas in industries and sectors to recruit in right now. And we are losing a lot of good people because organizations are counter offering and offering our people, either our existing people or people that we're looking to attract with 100% remote working. So if we're not flexible in that aspect, I think we might continue to lose good people. So salary is really important, it is. But actually, what's also come onto the agenda is the flexible working piece, this remote first.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more, actually. I think it's on the forefront of everyone's mind. And if you're not keeping up, then you're definitely going to lose out. Lucy, what are your thoughts on that? We touched on this the other day, so I know that you were kind of having a look at some different things.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. That way your job fits around your life is increasingly important now. People have got used to certain ways of working. Anecdotally, another experience I had, we had someone due to join our team actually, and they received a counter offer from their current employer, but it wasn't actually a financial counter offer. It was to put them onto a development program. And I think, it made me reflect back to the last time I was deciding whether or not to leave an organization and take on a new job. And one of the things you stand to lose, right, is if you're happy where you are, your reputation there, people know you've built up a network, and those things are all valuable, and that's what you stand to lose by starting over again with a new set of people. And actually that could be quite a powerful thing if you can really strengthen the benefit of that and say, yeah, but we know you, we have belief in you, we see you as a future leader, and we will put this development into you. I think that can be a really powerful thing as well if you don't have the budget to just constantly inflate salaries. So I think that can be something worth considering too, depending on where someone is in their career.
I'm going to share something from a piece of insights I got from Hacker Job sent to me recently, which was they surveyed over 2,000 software developers, and it was exactly that question. So this will help answer it as well. What key perks are developers looking for when looking for a job? And again, hybrid working is one of the key areas that Dani's alluded to there. Remote working, pensions, recreational leisure. Options to work abroad and remotely in environments that they feel more comfortable. So actually, if you look at this pie chart, while there are lots of different segments to it, option to work abroad, remote working, hybrid working, 3 of them, which consists of nearly 50% of this effectively, are about not being in the office anymore, which is really interesting. So businesses are having to look at do we need these offices anymore? Do we need to be asking people to come in? We did something recently for it was, I think it was actually for Collinson, where we did a piece of research on they were looking for a particular role, and we said that the population for this particular role is 1,500 people, and of the 1,500 people, there are nearly 1,500 job adverts for that people. So competition is very, very high. However, our insights tell us, and the technology that we use tells us, that if you expand this search by an XYZ radius, the population grows. And if you create a hybrid, working remote environment, this population and our addressable market for you is much, much larger, and will be there'll be much more opportunity to find this talent for you. And again, I think Collinson, you did, and you've been very open to the insights and feedback and adapting your talent strategy accordingly.
One of the things I'll also say is that the pandemic gave people a chance to really reflect on what's important to them and really take stock of what makes them happy, and also to think about, are the values, my personal values, does it connect and resonate with the organization I'm working with right now? Yeah. Because what was important to people pre-pandemic has changed as we've just gone through this crazy period in our lives, and this links to what everyone is now saying, that recruitment talent acquisition has moved more from kind of like getting bums on seats and advertising, more to kind of like marketing and putting your brand out there and putting what your values are as an organization. Because if you think about marketing generally, there are certain brands you use. Why do you use them? Because they clearly resonate and attract you more than other brands do. And I think that's the same thing now with recruitment, and I think it's the same thing now with companies. Companies need to be really clear on who they are, what their values are, what they stand for, and not be ashamed, and to put that out there and go, this is what we're about, and then be clear on the kind of person that they're going to attract. I know the kind of person they're going to attract as a result. I think that's something that's very, very, very important.
I could not agree more. I think there are two very simple things at play when it comes to talent acquisition. If you want to sort of simplify it, I think there's compatibility and there's capability, right? And I think the marketing content that you put out about your business that tells stories about who works there and the careers, tell stories about the leadership, tell stories about the environment they're going to be working with. That allows people to go, can I see myself working there? Am I compatible with these guys? It doesn't mean if it's a bad place if they're not. It just means I can see myself working here. That's compatibility. That's the window in which people can look through. I can see myself working. I feel compatible. So I will apply for this job. And then you have to go through an interview process. That's the talent acquisition piece, which is, okay, let's assess you for, are you capable for the job? Because you might be compatible for us as a business, but are you capable to do the job that you've applied for? And I think that's so important, Dani. I think it's a really, really, really solid point. I'm going to actually jump. I've seen one of the points because I'm conscious of time. There's something I think we should land on, which Sue Greenland has asked to the panelists, which is around what are our thoughts on the importance of culture, purpose, D&I, and sustainability. So that's a massive question, right? But Dani, I know you've done a lot of work on D&I. Lucy, we've spoken about this before, from a GSK point of view. Can you just give the guests an overview of how GSK and Collinson approach diversity and inclusion? Lucy.
Yeah, I think it's certainly a focus that has sharpened. Certainly in the early talent space, it's something that is for a long time been very central, and I think it's been a great opportunity actually for early talent to raise its strategic presence in organizations, because most of the challenges we have with inclusion and diversity are rooted in the labour market. There are a shortage of people from certain backgrounds and certain professions. It's not as simple as saying they just don't want to work for you. We all have the same challenge. And actually the only sustainable way of changing that is to change your labour market. You need to bring more people into the industry, whether that's through, new entrants to the workforce generally, or whether it's career changes and trying to sort of balance demographics that way. And I think the inclusion part is really important. I think that piece actually it flows on really nicely from that point about compatibility with an organization, that I think historically organizations have often taken it upon themselves as that's something for them to measure. And I think what that means is it leads to this idea of culture fit, and your culture is the way we work and you have to join into our ways of working. And I think I heard a really nice statement over the summer. Actually, I was at an event and one of the presenters said, you need to persuade your organizations to stop talking about culture fit and start talking about culture add, because actually that's really the crux of diversity. It is bringing people who bring different perspectives. And the more you try and work out, do you fit in with my culture? What you're really asking is, are you like us? And that should inherently be a bad thing. That should mean actually this person isn't bringing any new thought to the organization if they're going to approach everything the same way we have. So I think that's something we've really tried to embed in our process going forwards, is thinking about, compatibility is about persuading people that whatever their perspectives are, they are welcome in your organization and that you will see that as a strength. And I think, it's a really hard thing to tell, because you can only tell your story through the people already there. But I think, people who have maybe gone through that journey of thinking, I don't think that type of profession would be for me, it's helping to share those stories of how they were persuaded otherwise and how they are approaching things differently and how that's welcomed. And I think that is hopefully what resonates then with audiences that might be having those same doubts about, can I really see myself there? The fact that you might not see yourself represented there shouldn't stop you from wanting to go there yourself. And I think that's really important if your diversity is not currently where you would like it to be.
Yeah, because actually, there are many businesses out there where obviously it isn't, but they've got to start from somewhere, right? So how, they've got to draw the line somewhere, and they've got to look for people to add to the culture and the inclusivity of the business. Dani, what about from your point of view?
If that is the Sue Greenland that I know, she's an absolute legend. So that's a great question. I think I know who the person is. So from a Collinson point of view, and also actually in terms of my opinion, diversity and inclusion and sustainability has become more important than ever. We are finding, and data and stats will show you, there's an increase in candidates through the hiring process actually rejecting or avoiding organizations that that don't have a richness of diversity. Yeah, and I think that is also coming from the younger generation that are coming through. We're now in a place where we've got 5 different generations in the workforce. I do a lot of work with early career talent. I work with a lot of charities and organizations to support early career talent. Whenever I'm doing these kind of future leadership forums or speaking as somebody from the corporate world at these kind of events with graduates and people who are non-graduates, the first thing they ask me is, what does Collinson do from a sustainability point of view? What's your CSR strategy? How does Collinson give back? And then the other thing they ask is how diverse is your organization? I went onto your website, I looked at your leadership team, I didn't really see any diversity, and then I have to defend and talk about it and say, actually, if you then look at our people, it's something we're working on. It is so important. And I think that as the younger generation, the Gen Zs and the early career talent become the kind of main percentage of the workforce moving forward, if you are not ahead of the game, if your organization isn't diverse, isn't bringing in a diverse workforce, and isn't thinking about sustainability and CSR and giving back, I don't think you will attract long-term future talent, in my view.
Great answer. Thank you very much. And great question. Sophie, we've got 5 minutes. Have we got anything else we want to be going to the panel, questions, all that sort of stuff?
Well, I think what we should maybe finish on was, Lucy, something you and I had spoken about is the current hiring challenges. And you made a very good point that hiring is a challenge. And, it's a really good time to use this. Everything's focused on it. Every company is paying attention. Like, how can recruitment leaders use this opportunity to get in front of the board and make the changes that they need? So I just wanted to touch on that again, really, because I think it was a really good point. Whether this is here to stay or whether it's a small time a small window of opportunity. How would you kind of advise others or recommend they use this platform if it is only just for the here and now?
I think it feels to me that we see now in mainstream press, I think, the CBI conference this year had a number of notable points in the news, but there is a lot on the agenda around attracting talent and around setting your company up for the future. And I think it can be challenging as a recruitment organization. I think, unlike Dani at GSK, recruitment sits very separately to talent, and it sits with our people services. It sits quite a transactional team that you give us a vacancy, we give you your candidates. And I think it's been a real shift for us to be sitting at some of the tables we are sitting at, discussing some of these talent challenges and their impact on the business. And I think it is important that we use this opportunity while we're having these conversations to think about how are we future-proofing our talent pipelines. What are the messages that business leaders need to hear now about the role they can play in preventing these challenges in the future and making us more agile and, you know, able to respond to these changes in the market, which, as we look ahead to next year, I think is the only certainty is uncertainty sometimes, and we don't know what we're going to face, and we have to be prepared to react to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you said something to me, you know, reactive is sometimes considered a bit of a dirty word, but actually at the moment, to be reactive and to be able to remain agile in this environment is probably key to anyone's success.
Yeah, I definitely think so. You know, it's seen as not strategic. You know, you should be proactive with everything you do, but actually the reality is responding to market situations like this is a really important part for us to be able to deliver what the business needs.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. Go on, Sophie, do you want to wrap up?
I was going to say, so we've come to the end. I don't know if there's anything, any sort of closing words from either of our panelists, but we just wanted to say a massive thank you to both of you for giving us your time and definitely your expertise. I think it's been some really good topics, and you know, some outside of the box as well, not just the obvious. You know, what are we doing about war on talent, just really going beyond that to think about what we can do for next year and how we are going to tackle it. So yeah, thank you very much. For everyone that's tuned in as well, thank you. We'll obviously be sharing it online for anyone that's missed it. But yeah, just a big thanks to everybody.
Thank you, guys. Really appreciate it. Thank you for taking the time. I know how busy you are.
Me.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.